All right.
Mhm.
I hate you so much, Ian. I hate you so much. Hello and welcome to the Park Stop Podcast, episode 24. My name is Alicia Stella. With me, as always, my co-host Ian.
Hey, kids.
I say that so much now; it's starting to slur into like one long word.
That's fine.
Today, we have a very special guest with us. Theme park journalist Carly Wiesel is here.
Hello!
Yay!
Yay!
And we are going to talk about the parks reopening. I do want to thank our Patreon supporters, and we do have some new producers and new executive producers since our last episode, and these are a big help. All of you are a big help. Thank you to our new executive producers, Greg, Connor, Eric, Jeremy, and Paolo. Paolo's been a member for a while, but just upgraded, so thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Yay!
Okay, so Carly and myself did go to the theme parks. It's been a few weeks for me. Carly, when were you there? A couple of weeks ago?
I was there for about a week around the opening, which I couldn't tell you at this point if that was yesterday or 4 years ago.
I know.
It feels
It's 2020 time, so it's like, was that 6 months ago or 2 weeks ago or yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like 20 news cycles ago. That's how long it was.
Yes.
And I was only there for 2 days. I went to Magic Kingdom for the annual pass holder preview, whenever day that was. And I went to Universal a couple days earlier. And that's all I've done. But you were there for a whole week?
Yeah, I was there for 9 nights total. I split my time between the parks. I kind of stretched it out so that I'd be able to see everything, but I didn't feel as though I had to be there from start to finish every day. So
Gotcha.
I went to all the parks. I visited a couple resort hotels. I went to Disney Springs, and I spent a limited afternoon at Universal just to kind of get the feel for what they were doing there.
Okay, so you just popped in.
Yeah, honestly, I was there. I had some stuff to do in the morning, and then there was a window in the afternoon, so I went. Had to get on ET, and then kind of walked through both parks and got a feel for the security measures, things like that, the safety procedures, and then I bounced.
And you're working on a larger piece, and that's the main reason for your visit? Yes.
I visited for a news outlet, and I have been drowning in this story for weeks, and it's almost done. But I usually, when I go to the parks, it's either, for half leisure, half business, it's always kind of a mix when you're dealing in roller coaster news. But I usually go for that. But for this, because it was such a big event and because it's such a large story, even beyond the parks, just in terms of Florida and local government and everything that's happening around the parks opening that feeds into the reasons why things are the way they are, I felt it was more important to use one of the news sites that I freelance for. So I spoke to them months ago and we lined it up, and I went there with reporting being the top of mind at all times.
Okay. Yeah, and that describes my visits, especially this one, where it's like, I'm there to work, but I'm also there. I'm gonna have fun. That's a side effect. Even when I file my taxes, they're like, you can only claim half of it because you're half having fun, and it's like, you got me. But it is a little different. It is not necessarily like a normal day at the park. Just because I went back to the park doesn't mean I went back to the park, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's not like I didn't just run around. I was barely there, even at Universal. I was there for just a few hours. And, normally I would stay a little bit longer, but just to get the footage I needed to do. And then I ended up riding more rides than I thought I would because the lines were short. But at the same time, you always have that in the back of your mind. It's like, look at this, it's amazing. It's a walk on for, whatever. I can walk right onto the Mummy right now. But at the same time, you're like, I should be at home. I shouldn't be here. You look around, everyone's got a mask on. People have face shields at Disney World. It's not like you can pretend that everything's normal and leave the world behind like you normally would at a theme park. And that's a big thing that I noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a certain carefree attitude that most people who in regular times would go to a theme park with, because it is a vacation destination. And I'm realizing in interviewing different people who went that everyone really was in charge of and thinking about their own safety, but some of us were much more worried than others. And for myself, I rarely removed my mask to eat. I didn't really drink any water. It was, for me, it was more like I am here 100% working and focused on that and just trying to keep myself safe in doing so.
Yeah, there was I went to Cosmic Rays to eat lunch, and I went to go sit outside with my food because it's safer outside, at least according to most of the more recent studies. So I'm sitting outside, and then I realize I'm the only one sitting outside. And not only that, but like there's like 20 tables between me and even the pathway. So I actually sat there for like 90 minutes because it felt like the safest place I could possibly be in the Magic Kingdom. I put my mask back on after done eating, but I still stayed there. And there was a fan overhead on top of me. Like it was hot outside, but I wasn't sweating anymore. And I was like, you know what? This is my home now. I'm never leaving.
I had almost the exact same experience on my last night when I was at Epcot. I went like 45 minutes before they closed. And I was like, I'm going to get some guacamole. And I got it. And I like found a table away from everyone, and the park had closed. And because there's no nighttime entertainment, there were people kind of walking around meandering, but there wasn't a lot of crowding. And it felt like for the first time, I had a authentic pre-pandemic experience at the parks because I didn't have to worry about anything around me. By the end of my meal, there was nobody there, and I walked the entire length from World Showcase to Epcot without seeing any other guests. So it was like, it took that for me to feel like it was 100% the way it used to be.
Whoa.
Pretty much. Since we mentioned it, how it's always in the back of your mind, I had called it I compared it to like defensive driving, where you have to really keep your wits about you. I called it vigilant awareness. Like I coined it. Vigilant awareness. You can't go into vacation mode and go into like tourist brain mode when you're in the parks. You have to like make sure that you are being polite to others and giving them space, but also when they're not, able to give you space, you have to work around that. I found myself like moving to the end of every line whenever possible. Like getting off the ferry, I to the Magic Kingdom, I rode on the top and the front, and I'm like, no wind's gonna bring anything to me. I'm in the front. And then I was like, I waited till every single person had exited, and then I walked last. And I'm like, I'm not, I don't have to worry about people pushing or shoving. I can move at my own pace. And then I realized it wasn't just the start of the day, the whole day. That's how I was. Where like I did see a show. I saw PhilharMagic, and I sat in the back row. When I was at Universal, I saw the Bourne show, and I sat in the back row, and I'm like, I'm in the back. I don't have to worry about people behind me doing something they shouldn't be doing. I know I could see the whole theater. If anything comes at me, I can run away. So vigilant awareness.
It's a real like mafia style approach where like if someone's going to gun you down, you don't want it to be a surprise. Yeah, I completely relate to it. But it was interesting because when I was there, I would kind of be in the parks with colleagues, and we were always very, very cognizant of how close we were to each other and always being very safe, and we wear masks around each other, everything like that, be outdoors. But some of them, have been in the parks for longer than I have been because I had only gone for the opening. So people who live in Florida have likely, and especially if you cover the parks every day, have been in the parks more. And I found it interesting that they were doing the exact same things I was doing in terms of safety, like wearing a mask, rarely taking it off, washing their hands constantly, but they definitely seemed more comfortable and used to it. So I do think that some of my stress about being like, this person is exactly 8 feet away from me and they're coming closer, they're going to hit the 6 foot mark, what do I do? Like that was exacerbated by not having been in public a lot. But I think that the flip side of that is that there is a possibility when you're there for a while and you kind of get used to being in the crowds, you let your guard down, which I know I and some other people mentioned feeling towards the end of their trip.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't gone to the parks since Universal opened. That was the first time. I waited till Disney opened. I figured Universal was going to be dead when Disney opened. I think I was right. There was like no one at Universal. I'm like, I know where everyone is. Someone tweeted at me. It's like, everyone else is at, Disney World for the grand opening day and you're at Universal. And I'm like, when everyone else zigs, you got to zag. Yep. So, but no, I waited like a good amount of time. Strangely enough, I was waiting to make, to see if they got into the swing of things, if things got better. I was afraid on the opening days at Universal that things would not go as perfect. But then when I got the annual pass preview thing for Magic Kingdom, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? They're going to do limited capacity for the preview. So this might actually be a good opportunity to get in there before it's, totally crazy crowded. But at the same time, I had to deal with, the cast members not being used to it. This is their first day, I think Universal having a month, they were into the groove of it, and they definitely, like, even since we've gone, they've both parks have adjusted their mask policies to be a little bit more stringent.
Yes, which I'm very thankful for. I'm really glad that they are paying attention to what's going on in the parks and they are willing to adjust things accordingly. I think that's going to be so key moving forward, especially because this is not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. Like, these guidelines, I hope these guidelines stay in place as long as possible, even if things do get better. But when I visited Universal, I did notice that also, that it felt like it was routine. It felt like they were used to this. Everything was running smoothly. And granted, they have about a month ahead of Disney, so we'll have to see what Disney is like in a couple of weeks. But there is the concern, that once, like I said, like once you get used to it, like things just kind of start not being up to the same standard. And it just felt more so routine there. Like it was like, this is just what we do now, which I really enjoyed.
So you guys have both been, which company do you think is doing a better job generally? Because I've heard arguments for both. It seems to me that Universal seems to be more on the ball and even started at a little bit better place. But I'm just curious, since you guys have both been, which company you think is doing this better in their parks?
Carly?
me first. So I will preface this by saying that I have spent a disproportionate amount of time at Disney World. And I was there at the opening, whereas I was at Universal weeks into it. So it's really hard for me to gauge really who's doing what better. But I think that some things are done better at one, some things are done better at the other.
Yeah.
But
that's
across the board, I'm really pleased with what both resorts are doing, and not doing that to like worm out of this question.
No, you stole my answer. I was going to say they're both doing things differently, and yet they're both equal footing.
That is a good answer for me. I mean, I want both of them to succeed, so I'm not trying to throw either under the bus. I think the fact that I didn't feel
significantly more or less safe at one or the other means that they're both doing the right stuff. Like they both have the right precautions in place. They are different resorts, especially like even park to park, things are laid out so differently, which I think we've also seen in like Magic Kingdom compared to Animal Kingdom. Just like the way crowds move through the different types of spaces, like brings up different issues and also kind of squashes other ones. But the one thing I will say, if we are pinning the parks against each other, is that there is a big difference between quality of hand sanitizer. And I'm not afraid to say that on the record.
Go on.
Did you notice this also? I got to Universal and used hand sanitizer and I was like, ooh, mama, like this is nice. It was good. It was good hand sanitizer.
It's the one that they make you, and also the fact that they make you use it before you go on a ride. I don't know if you did any rides, but there's a team member right before you load on, and just like he'll swoop out of nowhere and be like, here, squirt it right in your hands, and you can't say no to it. Disney's not requiring that, and they have them right before you load onto the ride. But the fact that they're requiring it, I don't know, like safety theater, like as far as theater goes, forcing every single person to put hand sanitizer, and it's so goopy and thick. And like the first ride I went on, he put so much that it took several minutes to really wipe it in, and I'm like, I feel so much safer now. But but here's the thing, the little ones you can buy in the gift shop at Universal, which have like the keychain on them, which makes them super handy, smell like the worst thing you'll ever smell in your entire life because there's like a scent added or something. So some people are like, I hate the hand sanitizer at Universal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's the highest quality stuff I've ever seen. And they're like, well, I bought one. I was like, oh no, the gift shop ones are terrible.
No. I'm talking
absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
I
exactly. mean, the complimentary goos. So I because this is like, I don't know why I do this with my time. I went to guest services because I at Disney World because I wanted to write a cast compliment for a very wonderful member of the Incredible crew who I think was doing an exemplary job. And so I went there and was like, oh my God, you guys have Purell here? Because they had like name brand, like
Whoa.
when you used to go to a drugstore and buy Purell, like a 6.7 ounce bottle, like whatever that is. So I was talking to them about it and I was like, why is this so much better than what's in the parks? And you guys, I think you have a deal with Purell because it's always branded on the cruise line. Like it's always like the brand name, as far as I remember in the olden days. But I asked about it and they were like, oh, it's all like fulfillment, which is what I assumed, where they just got like whatever they could from whoever. So there's different types throughout the resort. And Universal's is better. I'm sorry. Better.
Well, but see, and on the other side of that coin, though, it's hard to find the self-serve ones at the exit of the rides at Universal.
Yeah.
Like they're around the corner. You have to turn behind you, make a U-turn to even see them on the wall. Whereas Disney, it is right in the walkway. Like they put them at the entrance and exit of every single gift shop, every single ride. It's in the walkways. There's hand washing stations. So it's not mandatory to go on a ride to get the hand sanitizer. And they all look the same, which someone was saying, like, we need to theme these. And I'm like, don't theme them. Like, I want them to stand out. I want to find them very easily. Universal has hid them behind walls and stuff. And I like that Disney's is like right in my face. And for some reason, magically never ran out all day. But that's my experience. Yeah. So there's pluses and minuses. And a lot of my minuses are equal for both parks. Like the things that I found wrong. Although, okay, hold on. Hold on. Let me shut the door. Okay. The cat came in again. No, I do have one minus and one plus for Disney. The mask-free zones aren't great. They're not great. They're in Magic Kingdom, especially, they're way too small and they're butted up right against the pathway. So you have a bunch of people without masks sitting too close together in a very small confined space, right within breathing distance of people walking by on the pathway. Whereas at least at like Islands of Adventure, you have the entire Sinbad Theater is open where you can sit on, in a giant amphitheater very far away from another person. The entire waterfront area at Port of Entry is open. And that is so distanced away from the pathway. You're at least 40 feet away from the closest person walking by and you can spread out more easily. And then Disney has I want to use the word audacity to have indoor mask-free zones as their like relaxation stations. They have the Pizza Safari at Animal Kingdom. I think there was one in the circus area at Fantasyland. And it just feels wrong. Like at least in a restaurant, you're eating and there's a reason you're in there and maybe you can limit your time and then go. But to just sit with your mask off inside of a building is just wrong to me.
Yeah. And I've done extensive research about exactly this because what's free time? So yes, the concerns with dining indoors and being in an indoor mask relaxation zone are the same. It all depends on what the air filtration system is like within the space, and it depends on where people are sitting within it. I walked into the relaxation station just to see what it was, and they do have, which I didn't notice at the Universal ones, because I think the only one I saw was the Central Park space, which is mostly just open. It's just like a park. At the one in Magic Kingdom, the indoor one, they did have spots that you had to be in that were 6 feet apart from each other. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like it goes completely in line with guidelines. Yeah. But personally, I wasn't comfortable doing either. I wasn't okay really being in any mask-free zone, even though outdoors mask-free away from everyone is like fine. Well, debatably asterisk, but I wasn't comfortable with eating indoors or being in an indoor mask zone. So for me, both of those weren't good, but I completely understand how if you are in that heat and you're like, I gotta get out of it, that would be extremely tempting.
Right. Well, that's the problem is that it is tempting, but you're right though. They are technically 6 feet apart in the indoor settings, and like the little seating area at Golden Oak chicken nugget stand or whatever. It used to be the McDonald's French fries. Like this is a teeny tiny seating area. And I feel like there needs to be, if you're going to do something like this, it needs to be bigger, because the demand, like as soon as people see, oh, I can go and take my mask off, like that might be. So some theme parks, I saw some amusement parks stopped having the relaxation zones altogether. They just took them away. I forgot which one it was, but
I didn't know that.
Some regional park chain, one of them said, we don't think it's safe to take your mask off, so we're not having it.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, like I would need to drink water, but instead of just grabbing a sip of water, I would take my bottle that I usually carry around with me and I would find a spot off to the side 20 feet away and lift my mask and just guzzle the whole thing and then put my mask back down. So like on Facebook, no offense to people in general, but this whole like I found a loophole, you guys. If you carry around a Starbucks cup all day, you don't have to wear a mask. Like,
yeah,
oh, dude.
it's the thing that I have, I guess, taken to heart most in this entire experience is that there are so many different things happening all at once. So, like, every example is happening and is true. So, like, I've heard of people who have been holding a Starbucks and someone has come by and been like, you have to have your mask on unless you're actively drinking. And then there's examples like that. And there's examples where like everything goes great. There's examples where nothing goes great. It just seems like there's so much happening at once because all of these rules are so visible. Like you can physically see if someone's following it or not.
Right.
And
right.
I'm really glad that they changed that rule and that they pivoted knowing that it's a small change that will make the park much safer. But it's just, I mean, there's just so much happening. It's overwhelming. And I am very envious of people who are like, yeah, I'm going to leave my mask on. I'm going to do everything right. And I'm going to go enjoy myself because I was not personally able to do that. I was thinking about this every second of the day.
Yeah, and I should jump in and say we kind of just started this without really prefacing it, and we probably should have. But like these are our personal feelings. how what makes you feel safe is going to be different from what makes other people feel safe. And
yes.
Some people might go to the parks and not ever really technically feel safe because, as they say in the thousands of signs and the thing in the waiver you have to like check the box for when you get your park reservation for Disney, it says that being in any public place around other people is a risk. Like they're not saying it's 100% safe. Nowhere does it say welcome to the Magic Kingdom, you're safe here. It's it specifically says you're not. Like there's a chance no matter what. And so some people will feel safer, but that's just how you can't tell someone how to feel.
Yeah,
Disney
absolutely.
did a really good job with their bubble.
Yeah. I mean, and I emphasize my personal feelings because I have spent every minute of the past week reporting on experts' takes on this. So this is just like me being personal. Like, this is how I feel. But you are absolutely right. There is a risk no matter what when you are entering a space like this. Also, I think something to remind people of is that even if you have universal masking as a goal, it is very hard to do to make sure that everyone, even if everyone is wearing masks, that they're doing it properly. Also, mask wearing on both parties does not 100% equal no transmission. So you have all of these different things that are very ambiguous, and you add an invisible virus into the mix, and you add as many safety precautions as you can put in, and it's very hard to calculate what the risk is. But what I have been told by the people I've been interviewing and what I've tried to emphasize is that outdoor is better than indoor. I have been a big advocate for knowing your personal safety limits. So kind of if you are going to go to the park, approach it knowing what you are and are not okay with. For me personally, that was limiting the amount of indoor attractions I went on. It was not dining indoors. Or if I was indoors, not taking my mask off. I ate a lot of food underneath my mask, which was not a party, but I choked down a whole baguette at a character breakfast and I made it work. But it's just like really like having a plan and going in, which is not really what most people are used to doing when planning a Disney World or Universal Orlando Resort vacation. But I think that knowing what you are going to do yourself to keep yourself safe, and having guidelines for yourself because you can't really control everyone around you is the best approach.
And I wrote, I felt compelled to write a quick article. It was more like a stream of consciousness. It wasn't even an article where I pitted Universal versus Disney on what I thought they did better or worse. And I kind of came to the conclusion by the end of it that both of them had like what was worse for me was the same situation in both parks and both resorts, which was, and they've kind of addressed it this past week, but it was the snack stand situation where if like people are in line getting their Dole Whips and their citrus swirls, like this was probably one of the worst ones, that and the Florian Fortescue's ice cream in Diagon Alley, when they get out, especially in Diagon Alley. They're not, they
Yeah.
just, they go into theme park mode and they have melting ice cream in their hand in the 90-degree sun, and they take their mask off and they start eating their ice cream. Some will walk around eating their ice cream. Others will just literally stand in front of the door that they exited out of and just eat it, like looking up at the dragon, waiting for it to breathe fire. And there's no seating areas whatsoever for Diagon Alley. There's no, like, there's some steps in a couple places, but there's nowhere for you to take like ice cream. You could take it into Nocturne Alley, and there's 3 benches in there. And if hopefully one of them's like not seated already, maybe you could sit there. People usually sit on the ground in front of the bathrooms. I walked up the fake steps to the left of Gringotts all the way to the tippy top so that I could be 8 feet away from the closest person. And I just watched people go in, get their ice cream, and just huddle. Like, just, there's no 6 feet apart, just huddles of people eating ice cream without their mask on. And same thing with the Citrus Swirl and the Dole Whip. For Citrus Swirl and Dole Whip, there's like at least when I was there, Tortuga Cafe or whatever was not open, right across from Pirates of the Caribbean. That's a large outdoor seating area that is completely not being used, which, by the way, would make a really good mask-free zone if you're,
it's directly opposite from the small one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like, maybe we should have cast members direct, like, we have a seating area off to the side here that you can enjoy this. Or if you can't find a bench off to the here, we need you to please step out of the pathway. Like, there was no one directing people to do that. And so there's just large huddles of people. But then this past week, when they, have the Epcot Food and Wine Light going on, they did clarify their mask policy. You can't just walk around and eat food and wine stuff while walking through World Showcase. So to some extent, hopefully they put lots of garbage cans out, because that way we have our space tables. But
yeah,
so they did clarify that rule a little bit.
Yeah. So as I said, like, I really went into it being like, this is not a vacation. If I have to skip things that I would usually love doing, I have to accept that. So for me to not eat at Florian Fortescue's the world is on fire, basically, because my move is that I usually go there for breakfast and people have to force me to not eat it before I go on Gringotts, because they're like, this is a poor choice. And I'm like, I can't wait. But that said, like, everyone else is going for vacation. So it's really hard, because there's stuff that used to be so innocuous that you're used to doing. Like, everyone eats that ice cream outside the door. Like, that's, it's just what we're used to doing. And it's one of those pain points where it's like, this is not safe to do anymore, but I don't know how to fix it. And so I agree that there are these, in my story, which is coming out, I kind of described it as they planned, and my story is Disney focused, but they planned for all of these guidelines, and anything that's a little outside of that is murky. So you have stuff like this where in Diagon Alley, it's so tight and you're holding a product that is rapidly vanishing, and it's really tricky. It's really hard. So I only went to Epcot during the day on a cast member preview day. I was brought as someone's guest. And even then, it was for the most part good, but I saw things that were laying seeds of questionability, I suppose you could say. So I'm very happy they changed the policy, and that from what I understand, there are more casts out there enforcing it, that they are walking around and encouraging people to go off to the side. So you don't have that, like, I have food in my hand that's melting, I want to eat it.
What's even worse is that I got my butterbeer ice cream from the back. Like, it didn't come from one of the normal machines, so it already had to come from a longer walk. So it came to me melted already. And I'm like, I'm not taking my mask off to lick this until I get out of the way. And for once, the stairs were open. The stairs are never open. There's like usually 35 people or like one large tour group that is taking up that entire staircase. And there was just one couple who was halfway up the stairs. And I'm like, oh, you guys are so smart. I'll go to the top of the stairs. You guys are safe down there at the bottom. We're good.
Yeah. And it definitely is that mix where having, let's say, an ice cream cone and you're in Diagon Alley, which is very narrow, you're like, this is not good. But then you mix it with the fact that crowds are lower and they're forcing them to be lower. And it's kind of like, I think this is okay. Like, everything feels like this mitigated risk where you're like, I think this is going to be fine considering that this is balancing this. But again, it's a virus that is very difficult to track. You can't see it. It's just everything is overwhelming.
I mean, you could do everything right, not go anywhere, and have a spouse who goes to work and comes and brings it home or something. Like like you can't plan or predict it 100%. And, you know, if you're scared of going to the theme parks for the risk, don't go to the theme parks, because it's not, you know, you're going to be scared the whole time. Someone was asking me like, which is the safest park? And I'm like, none, stay home. That's the safest park. Like, I don't know if you're really that concerned about it. Like, they're both trying as hard as they can. And like Disney has plexiglass up and Universal's closed half their switchbacks. And it's like, they have the same effect. But at the same time, you know, you can't predict this virus. You can't predict what an indoor situation or how the airflow or who you will be stuck in a room with for 15 minutes and whether or not, you know, you're going to get it.
Yeah. That's why I'm always like, I just come back to what any medical sources told me, which is just stick to like outdoors better than indoors. Try to stay as far away from people as possible. 6 feet is just a recommendation. So I think that there is a risk in going to these parks, especially if you are traveling. And I had to fly, which was not enjoyable.
Ooh,
but
yeah, no.
Yeah. So when you're encouraged, these resorts being open are encouraging people to travel, which is its own can of worms. But in terms of going to the park, I think there is a strata of safer and less safe activities within that questionably safe bubble. And that's something that I don't really feel like a lot of people are discussing, because people are going to go to these parks. Like, it's happening. I think that a lot of people are encouraging people to stay home, which I think is helpful, but like, people are going to go to the parks. It's just like, people be traveling. I went to the airport, people be traveling. The airport, when I flew back in, looked like Thanksgiving. I did not believe what I saw. So I think that it's just, if someone is going to go to the park who is listening to this, I think prioritize outdoor activities and maybe accept the fact that it may not be a safe choice to do everything you would usually do there.
I tweeted out that when I think it was the first day the parks officially opened, because I'd gone to that preview, and I tweeted out that just remember, it's, you know, people say it's safer to eat your lunch outside and that air conditioning can be tempting, and like, but what I couldn't fit into the tweet is that there was fans outside, which I know it's blowing air, but still it's outside. It can circulate better. It's not being locked in. I wasn't sweating. I felt fine. Same thing at Islands of Adventure. I got Gyro Hero at the at the Lost Continent place, and I found some nice, you know, covered seating that's outside, completely open air, and it was very well distanced from other people, and I was very comfortable. And I would normally eat, you know, inside of Comic Strip Cafe or inside of the Three Broomsticks. And it was, you know, 95 degrees outside, but I still had a perfectly, I did take my cup of ice water and like kind of put it between my knees and let the cold kind of cool me down. So, but at the same time, I would be so scared if I was eating inside in general that I wouldn't be able to enjoy it. And I actually relaxed.
Yeah, I completely relate to what you say. And also, ice water is the MVP of a pandemic. It is like, I was never happier than when I had gotten a fountain. So I really, oh God, this is a whole tangent. But so my favorite thing to do when I'm in Florida is to go to Wawa and get like a gigantic Coke Freestyle seltzer. So like just soda water, and have that as like I go to the park being like, oh my God, I'm carrying a vat of cold, bubbly water. Like, this is the dream. And I went to Universal and I was like, oh yeah, they're doing the machines for you. And they weren't. It was just people pushing their mugs against the thing, which I am not cool with. So I ended up like talking to someone at one stand, and they're like, oh, go to the other one. They have a soda machine. So I was able to get a soda water, and I was so happy because it is so hot out. And that's a very good way to cool yourself down without going indoors.
Yeah, exactly. They sell cooling towels that they like come pre-moistened or whatever. You put it on your head or your neck or whatever. And like, there's ways, I guess. I want the suit that like the character people wear underneath their character suits. That's just like filtered water, like ice water running through your body.
Oh yeah, please.
I didn't know though that's what they had under. I thought it was just like
that could be an urban legend. I could be making that up, but we should buy it though.
I do have one of those cooling towels. You get wet and snap and they get cold, because I used to work outside a lot. Yeah, they work pretty good actually.
See, there you go. There's lots of things you can do.
Yeah.
It's not a cooling suit, but
Even the outdoor attractions, though, and this is like, I had to think, do I really want to go on the Hagrid coaster when if it breaks down and I'm stuck in a tunnel? That catacombs, those 3 catacomb tunnels in the queue for, Dueling Dragons back in the day, and now the Hagrid coaster, like that is probably the worst queue I would want to be in a pandemic. But then the ride itself is outside, and Mine Train, I was a little bit iffy about whether or not I wanted to do Mine Train, because that's also a close quarters, a lot of indoor space queue. They put ropes around the interactive elements, and there was still people playing, and not kids, grown-ups playing. They're like spinning the jewel barrel or whatever, and it's like there's a sign that literally says "Do not use."
Oh, come on. Guests don't listen. Come on. We just recorded stories. Guests don't listen.
Yeah, well, these are pass holders. They should know better. No, they don't.
But, I also saw that and was...
my mentality is scary.
I took the ferry in to the Magic Kingdom, but on the way out, I wanted to take the monorail because I wanted to write an article about what the different, I know in my mind I would feel safer on the ferry, open air, but at the same time, I wanted to see what the monorail was like.
So you held your breath the whole time?
Well, I had seen from the cast member preview that like everyone was getting their own cabin. They had a divider up. So they're getting it's technically 2 cabins per monorail section. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm just one person, but if I get my own cabin, then I'll be fine. And they're seating 2 parties per cabin, as in 1 per row. Yeah. So you're facing another family across from you, sharing this little divided space. And I'm thinking to myself, they have this divider up, but technically there's another person on the seat behind me who's only like 2 feet away, or a foot away from my head, on the other chair. So like, and then I'm thinking this divider is actually locking me in with this other family, and then our air is trapped in this tiny division. And all I could think the whole time was I should have taken the ferry.
Man.
So I had a similar experience on the monorail. I won't get into it, but we basically, our cabin got loaded incorrectly. It was AP preview, like these things happen. So it happens, like these are new procedures, whatever. So we had like a questionable experience, but separate from that, I went on there and I was like, what's the deal with this vinyl panel? Because this can't be doing anything, right? And so it's not
flush with the wall.
No. So I talked to an aerosol expert at MIT because I was like, I need an answer. And when I showed her photos of it and I discussed it with her, and I don't know if this is making it into the story or not, but she was basically like, it's open on all 4 sides. So it essentially does nothing. Like stuff like that can be helpful for splatter. If say someone on the other side is sneezing, like that'll serve as a barrier. That's what like the plexiglass is for.
Right.
But
it's a sneeze guard.
Yes. As my friend Brooke McDonald, who's another reporter, pointed out, is that, and especially on the separation like that on safaris, even though that's outdoors, so it's different. You could have a child who is facing you, and so whose mouth would line up with that hole of the panel. So it really it doesn't do much. And then the other fact that you're facing another party, and depending on the airflow and the air filtration in a monorail, which I wasn't going to say in my reported story, but I will say on a podcast from personal experience, we all know what the cleanliness level of those monorails is like. So I'm not going to gamble my firstborn on the air filtration within the monorail being as excellent as it could be.
Yeah. And for me, like it comes down to also how loud or who's talking or who's talking directly at you. Because if you're not moving your mouth and you're not sneezing and you're not breathing too hard, the mask should be somewhat effective. But if you're screaming, like on a ride, then you're projecting more. If you're singing, if you're, yelling, these are things that spread the particulates or whatever you want to call it, out of your mouth and across the room. So yeah, facing another family. And if they were in the midst of some kind of weird, crazy argument and screaming at each other, I would feel terrified even more.
Yeah. Or if they took their masks off, or if they weren't wearing their masks properly, there's a lot of factors happening there. And even though, the guidelines are 6 feet apart, which works wonders in some areas, and others it's like, I don't know. I think it's because I also asked this expert, I was like, so you would probably recommend taking the ferry over the monorail? And she was like, well, and we discussed kind of the way the airflow comes through the ferry is also an issue.
Right.
So,
which is why I sat up front.
yeah. So you know what's up. But it's kind of like, it just feels like everything. It's hard to say something safer than the other because there's so many factors at work. But I took the monorail a few times because I was in it once empty, which was seemingly fine, but also it depends what the airflow is like and kind of what she was also explaining to me what the residue on that panel might be, because I don't know how often they're cleaning it. So there is a possibility that the panel could also, and with a lot of these barriers, could restrict the airflow into a smaller area, and then you're dealing with a whole new problem.
Right. And even the plexiglass. Let's talk more about plexiglass.
Oh boy.
The Rise of the Resistance ride is still running, let's say, unreliably. And they have multiple like switchbacks and queue sections, especially on the Star Destroyer, that are keeping because they want to be able to have 2 rows, and you need to have like this plexiglass up because you can't be 6 feet apart from the other side of this row. But the plexiglass is only from like a normal stanchion height up. So it's only like starting 3.5 feet off the ground and then up to where heads normally are. Not maybe smaller children, not maybe taller Shaquille O'Neal people, but somewhere where normally heads are, and you are walking side by side with another row. Then the ride breaks down. Suddenly you're trapped in this small corridor with a divider is the only thing separating you, not that air can't go over or under. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes of standing there, everyone sits down and they're all face to face with no plexiglass facing the other side. And there's photos online, and I'm sure it's, just a rare occurrence or whatever, but this ride breaks down. And when I went there for opening day, when the ride broke down, they dumped the queue. They gave everyone a return pass. They dumped the queue. They didn't want anyone waiting because it might be a while. But for now, I've been seeing they've been keeping the line open, and people are just trapped in tiny little corridors facing each other without plexiglass for 15 to 45 minutes. And like, now's the time when you dump the queue. This is not the best time to have people trapped on a Star Destroyer that there are problems there, that there are unforeseen issues that, they'll just be here for 30 seconds.
Yes, I think so in my understanding from the interviews I've done, being indoors for a extended period of time is bad. Or is not ideal. Like, that's not a situation you want. So being indoors and kind of having behaviors that negate the plexiglass, which is there to help but doesn't completely solve any transmission. Like, there is still, like you said, above and below. I think the plexiglass is mostly so if someone is near you, you have a divider. And if you do have droplets, it will possibly stop them. Also, like I said before, it does affect the airflow because it could mean it's more stagnant like in that one area and not being pushed through. Also, I was not able to get an answer on this. It depends how often those plexiglass panels are cleaned. So it's like an endless, like, you can just keep like digging about particle details forever. But I do think that they need to be dumping the queue. I've been in a queue that's been dumped before pre-pandemic. And I also saw those photos. I saw ones that Blog Mickey had posted. And I also spoke to someone today for my story who mentioned being in a similar situation where they were indoors and were just like, I got to bounce because the line wasn't moving. So I'm hoping it's an operational thing that they will be tweaking going forward. But as I said in my story, which may or may not be out by the time this is out, is that it's wonderful if they can identify these issues and move forward with new operational updates. But it's still proved to be an unsafe environment at that day and time for those people. So it is, it's questionable. And I think that especially for rides, like you said, where the rides don't necessarily run 100% most of the time, I think it maybe might be good to go in with a mindset of, if this happens, I'm leaving.
Right. Yeah. For Hagrid and Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah. So similarly, what I had heard that like Buzz Lightyear was only being cleaned every 2 hours. How do you guys feel about that?
I think most rides at Disney are only getting cleaned every couple hours.
Yeah. I mean, but I was picking out Buzz because especially you have the blasters. So you're actually touching something that somebody definitely touched. There's no way
Well, you're
around
usually
it. So
touching a lap bar on 90% of the rides. Too.
That's true too. But I was just thinking of the guns,
Yeah.
because that's definitely going to be contact. So
that's why I think I felt safer at Universal, because they're also only cleaning, sporadically. But the fact that they put a giant glooping handful of sanitizer in every single person's hand before we got on, like the second right before you get on, like it gives that like sense in your mind, like, well, at least we're all on the same footing right now. They also at Universal are watching the monitors. If anyone removes their mask, they will take that ride vehicle, clean it, and let it cycle one whole time before loading it again.
Yeah, I don't want to plagiarize myself too much, because a chunk of the story exactly responds to everything you just said. But
sorry,
I know it's fine. But I will mention, because I don't think this made it in, that I did ask about Universal's antibacterial compared to Disney's. With Universal, it definitely feels better that you have it on your hands. And granted, in both of them, you use it before you get on the ride, which is good. But it's all in how you use it. And also with Universal, there is the possibility that you could use it and then something between then and boarding happens, where you touch a phone, you touch someone's phone, that like someone you're with who like maybe they coughed on it. Like it does raise questions. So nothing's perfect. Pandemic sucks.
Yep.
And I know way too much about contact spread now.
Yeah, I don't think I did anything interactive. I didn't do Men in Black or Buzz Lightyear. I didn't, and I always do Men in Black. But I actually think part of my fear of going into Men in Black was the air conditioning is so strong in that building, and I'm sitting here thinking air conditioning is the enemy. I'm not going into that building. If anywhere there's a place where airflow will pull something from across the building, it's going to be that building.
That's what's so hard, is that so many of these questions come down to what airflow they have in there, what filtration they have, how often it's cycling. And that stuff, like, you can't fact check. Like I'm never going to be able to find out like exactly what air filtration is inside Gringotts. Like it's just, I can't, I'm never going to know unless
even if you used the best, like, virus killing filtration system with all like with the UV light and all kinds of chemicals and whatever it is magic that they use, if you're sitting in a restaurant or something and you're 6 feet away from a table and that person has it and they don't know it and they're eating and you're eating and the air passes by you before it passes to a filter, then you could catch it. Like it's just, there's even with all the most like advanced security systems you could possibly imagine to protect us, it just comes down to who are you next to, and you can't predict that.
Exactly. And you can't predict who are you next to and where are they sitting in terms of where the air is going through.
Or the precautions they personally take. Because, people are at different levels with this for sure.
Yeah. Like going to the theme park when you have symptoms, or something that, but the, and airflow is unpredictable in general.
Yeah. Did you ever think that we would be on a theme park podcast talking about airflow?
No, I don't think anyone could have predicted. And that's what I wanted to get to next before we wrap up, was like, I've got a lot of people messaging me asking like, what are the parks going to be like in September? Or I have a vacation plan for December. Which one do you think will be busiest? And like, I pause and then I want to answer them. But at the same time, it's like, I could preface it with saying like, if it is like it is now, or I could preface it with saying, I don't know what the world's going to be like next week. What are you talking about, December? Like, we can't predict December. I can't predict. No one would have, like, Halloween Horror Nights, and I meant to mention it at the top, but Halloween Horror Nights was canceled 2 days after I saw people get hired. Like, people were saying, oh, I'm so excited. I got my response. I got hired. And then 2 days later, it's canceled. Like, that's how, like, drop of the hat, completely 180, everything can turn around in the pandemic. There's no predictability whatsoever one day to the next.
Well, there's also, there's more layers too than just a pandemic going on, but yeah, there's money issues out there too for people. There's a lot of layers with this.
Yeah, I mean, even if Halloween Horror Nights was to go on, I wouldn't feel safe enough to enjoy it, and B, I don't think I can afford it right now. I'm not sure how many people could afford much right now. It's one thing to go to the parks for a few hours because I'm an annual pass holder that's prepaid, but it's another to try to plan a vacation right now when you can't afford it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, and I think everyone is in agreement on this, especially people in Florida, is that this sucks for workers. Like it's terrible. It's terrible that people's jobs are either people are still not working, that people are relying on unemployment, that things like Halloween Horror Nights, like people had jobs lined up and now they have just disappeared. It is really tragic. And I mean, there is a reason why people might not have work right now. And that is a pretty valid reason, but it sucks so much. And I want to emphasize that, like, because I think a lot of people talk about this stuff, not you guys, but I've just seen, you know, other people who are maybe further removed from the community are just like, no. And it's like, oh, it's so much worse than not being able to walk through and have someone spook me. Like I feel so bad for the person that I hate while they walk past and spook me. Like the person who scares me to death. Like I feel bad that they're not able to make income terrifying me. But the reason why I've been like, I don't know anything is because it also depends. Like, let's say things get better nationwide where like our COVID numbers go down, things are looking pretty good. How will that affect how they increase capacity? And so I think depending on that mix of what nationwide, how things are going health wise, and then also what the park limitation is, those two together are the full story. And we won't know either of those until literally the morning of.
Yeah. And if it was me, if I'm thinking November anyway, everybody's predicting like vaccines and all this stuff this winter. So just wait a couple more months.
Yeah. And I
mean, that's probably safer anyway.
What I've been recommending to my friends is that the cancellation policies are really good right now. So even if you are almost certain you're not going to go, like if you're thinking about going, let's say January, let's say December, like you can, if you want to plan a trip, you can plan it knowing that you will pull out if you don't feel safe. Which I know that depends on, some people might be like, I already booked it, I guess I'm going to go. But I think that they've been really flexible about that. And so it is like, I think if you like are very concerned and like messaging Alicia constantly being like, should I go? You can book a trip and just bail later and just not buy tickets until then. Stuff like that.
We have friends in the UK who had trips planned coming up, and the Virgin canceled the flights, so they rebooked it again, and then Virgin canceled the flights again, and then they rebooked their hotel and their theme park tickets, but they one of my friends wanted to contact the hotel and make sure that they could rebook or cancel at the last minute if there's still a quarantine order in place, because like they can't go on vacation for a week but also add 2 weeks to quarantine. Like no one can afford that. So, you know, and the hotel was working with them and like, you know what, that's fine. We will reschedule. We waive all of our our change fees up until the moment that you cancel. And like they're working with you as best they can, but at the same time, we just don't know. And the overseas parks, some of them were increasing capacity almost on a weekly basis. Because the counts were going down so fast. And that's not happening here yet. I wish it was, but it is definitely possible that that the governor will issue, like, we're in a new phase, and we can open up more capacity at restaurants, you can open up more capacity at the theme parks. There is going to be eventually a time when they are going to add more capacity. So it is will the parks be busy? Will the parks be open? Like, it's so unpredictable.
I agree. I've been loosely but not closely following the overseas parks. Granted, Hong Kong Disneyland did shut down again. I believe they're still shut down. I haven't seen any update, but I also haven't checked it. But I assume they're still shut down.
And they did not have that many confirmed cases. That was just out of an abundance of caution. I could be wrong on this. I think Universal Japan actually is limiting capacity to only locals. Like they're not allowing outside people to even visit the parks. So it's almost like temporarily as a regional park only. Like I don't know how they're regulating that, and I probably should have looked it up before I mentioned it here on a podcast. But that's an interesting way to do it too. Is that the numbers are very low for the small surrounding area, so they feel safer only letting in locals. Whereas here in Florida, with something like the Magic Kingdom being the most popular theme park in the world, that even the small amount of people that are willing to travel are probably going to travel to come to, Disney World. So it's very different situation.
And then it's like the impact and potential spread of that.
Right. So. Poor us in Orlando.
Nah. #1 vacation destination in the world. Lucky.
And mentioning again about team members and cast members, I've spoken to team members that they don't want to lose their jobs. They want to keep their jobs. And I've seen arguments like, oh, the cast members and team members are so excited to go back to work. And then other people are like, don't go to a theme park. You can't go to a theme park. And then other people are like, well, you have to go to a theme park because they need their jobs. And well, I'm not going to go to a theme park if I don't feel safe going to a theme park. First of all, I'm not going to do it just for their jobs. But, this probably is not so much the individual cast members' fault as it is like a societal fault that we can't offer them a better safety net, and that they are willing to, even if they don't want to go to work, still go to work feeling unsafe.
Walking that edge.
Yeah. I will, like I've said, yeah.
We don't have a system in place. Like their unemployment stops because the parks are open,
Yep.
like that's the thing. You want money, you have to go to work, whether or not they want to or not.
Yep.
So
exactly. And it's a large issue, which is why the reason I traveled to Walt Disney World was to report on all of this, because I felt like just reporting on the opening and being like, there's antibacterial, wasn't at all telling the full story unless you explain that perspective of the employees where they're feeling everything at once. Some of them are feeling more of one, some more of the other. Also, you add in state government, you add in unemployment, you add in like the CARES Act. There's just a lot to the story. And it's hard. It's hard because you can work at the parks and you can feel extremely nervous about it, and you can be happy that you are back at your job at the same time.
Yes, right. People are like complicated and like have multiple emotions. It's strange. Like you can't explain a multifaceted person in one tweet. I'm sorry. That's the way of the world. But like feeling safe that like Walt Disney World making sure that most cast members that come in close contact, have the face shield in addition to a mask makes you feel a little bit better. Although, it sucks you have to wear a shield all day and you have that weird, like someone said, when they take it off at the end of the day, they feel like they're still wearing it because it's been squeezing their brain all day. But
weird.
that
weird.
extra layer of safety, that's a good feeling. But on the other hand, they're not requiring the face characters, the princesses, they're not allowing to even wear a mask at all.
I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard because on one hand, they put as many safety precautions into place as they could have. I can't think of many more they could have done. While also like you are still having a large group of people, albeit somewhat on the safer side, gathering in public and traveling. So it's like one and the other constantly battling. And that's why I find it so hard to, answer simple questions like, is it safe to go? Or like, should I be going? Like I would need 7 hours to discuss.
Yeah. And, everyone's going to be different. And like I went, those 2 days in the same week. And then I didn't do anything for 2 weeks afterward. Just
exactly. Yeah.
For my own, like I scheduled my park days because I went then and I'm going to go again in August around when I know I'm going to not see family for a while. Cause I have nieces that I didn't see for 3 months, which is like the longest I've gone without seeing them. And I knew I was going to go to the parks. So I waited till after I saw them. And then I made sure to time it so I wouldn't see them again for at least 3 weeks. And it's a conscious decision I'm making. And I don't know if it makes any difference at all, but it helps me sleep at night to know that like, okay, I'm taking this risk, but I'm also trying to be calculated about it, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important you mention that because it's not enforced. It's not even really like, unless you're in a specific state where it's mandated, it's not even really discussed or recommended that you quarantine after being in a very public place with lots of people. I'm coming to you from my last night of quarantine and I'm very excited to be done. But it's like that's another piece of it. And it's also like once you do travel, like let's say you don't take your mask off the entire time you're in the airport and flying. Let's say you go to the parks and you don't do anything indoors. You are only outside away from people. You're trying to do of the options, you're trying to do the ones that lean more safe. What happens when you come home? Are you seeing friends? Are you going to the grocery store where not everyone is like mask rules aren't being enforced? If your city doesn't have a mask requirement, are you walking around without one? Like, what is happening after, and what is the potential for that spread?
Yeah. And if you're working at a theme park, like I'm just visiting a theme park and I'm being super extra careful when I get home. What about people who have to work every day 8 hours or 9 hours, with a break in the middle, and then go home to their spouse or their family? Like there's no good answers to anything. Yeah. So like the arguments online never make sense to me because like I see both sides, but I can't agree 100% with anything.
Yeah, exactly. And especially for people who work there. And this got, I think, cut out of my story for space, but you have the issue of employees who are going back to work, but they also have to, just deal with the fact that maybe they live with someone elderly, maybe they have an immunocompromised child, but they need to work for money for their family. Like you have both of these things happening at once, which cause a lot of issues.
Guys, if you go to the parks, thank the cast members, team members, thank them for being there for you.
Thank them from 6 feet away, but thank them.
Thank them.
Yes. Be nice to them. Give cast compliments.
Yes, definitely.
Follow the rules. I think that make their jobs easier.
Yeah, please.
Don't make them yell at you.
Yeah, that should be normal though, without the pandemic. Don't make them.
That's true.
Yeah,
and don't yell at them because it's really not their fault. They're just endorsing rules.
Thank you so much, Carly, for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Where can the internet find you?
I was blessed with the gift of having a name that somehow nobody else has. So if you look up Carly Wiesel anywhere, I will be there on the internet, on Twitter, on Instagram. I have a Facebook group with a crew of very fun theme park loving people. It is a really nice space for if you want to like talk about parks or life or Starbucks, because we all have Starbucks. And my story may or may not be out by the time this goes live, but I'll be sharing it across social media.
Yeah,
so.
I will link to the story in the description of this podcast if it is out, because this probably won't come out till Thursday.
Okay, cool.
So
thank
you. So thank you again. And thanks to everyone for listening. And check out our Patreon at patreon.com/themeparkstop.
Bye, guys.
We have lots more stuff on there. Oh, yeah. Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye. Mom.
Bye.